Now, I guess this is going to be part 2 of the Men Are Not Okay video, since I tackled one particular issue, which is the public perception of masculinity and whether or not it can be considered negative or harmful to men itself, on account of how polarizing and, I guess you could say, brutal it can really be when someone is perceived to be less masculine or more masculine based upon their ability to hold in all their stresses and anguish to the point where they just explode and lash out at someone, or until they just slowly implode and then self-destruct because all the shit they go through finally just tears them apart. But next, let's go into the men are not okay in the relationship field, specifically when it comes down to the perception of female on male domestic violence. Now, everyone already knows that there are a lot of sitcoms, for example, that do play upon the joke that the woman wears the pants that the guy's henpecked, or the fact is that the woman will physically beat his ass if he does anything at all that remotely goes against her wishes, or even so much as challenges her authority in the relationship. Now, some of these jokes can be funny. Sometimes they can be actually very, very hilarious if they're well written and well timed, if they approach the issue with humor but also with understanding and compassion. But the problem is, a lot of the time the jokes are not written like that. They're not really worded, or I guess you can say set up, so that when the punchline is delivered or when the visual gag is finally introduced to the setup, it's not funny because it just comes off like it's trying to reinforce the stereotype that a woman being violent towards a man is considered to be socially and societally acceptable, because regardless of how small his misstep is, it must automatically be acceptable and warranted for her to start unloading a can of whoop ass on him for whatever fucking reason. And the problem is, due to this public perception of female on male domestic violence more or less being played off as a joke, a lot of people unfortunately don't seemingly take the gravity of such real-life situations seriously. I mean, if you look at the case of Jodi Arias, for example, you literally had a female who was incredibly violent towards her boyfriend, to the point to where she had returned to his home, had stabbed him and shot him repeatedly, and then claimed that he had somehow assaulted her, despite the fact that almost all of his wounds were post-mortem. People like that are the reason why a lot of these things that are played up for gags should also be met with concern and, I guess you can say, understanding. When a lot of these events, unfortunately, a lot of these jokes usually do end up more or less carry the dark undertones of very severe and very horrific things that actually do occur in the real world, that are unfortunately not really expanded upon, and there's no real dialogue being had, because people would rather not have a dialogue about serious topics when they could much rather simply say the man in question is inherently weak, therefore he does not deserve to be treated like a person because he's a man, and if she whoops his ass or kicks him or throws shit at him or does anything out there to inflict emotional or psychological or physical harm to him, he must deserve it on account of the public's perception that the girl is automatically justified to physically strike you, regardless of whether or not what you did is not even warranting violence. I mean, you see it in that one video, for example, where that girl walks up and just randomly she hits that one kid in the fucking face after he's repeatedly trying to get away from her and slowly trying to give her space. And instead of people simply saying, well, look, you were coming after him the whole time. He was trying to get away from you. He was trying to do everything he could to give you space so that you would not lay a finger on him. Instead of that, people that were there were jumping all over his ass instead of jumping all over her for being the one that assaulted him first, before he responded in kind after trying to flee and potentially get space between him and her. And for some reason, the other kids were jumping all over this dude for, I guess, hitting her back after trying to get away from her. It wasn't like there was no attempt to get away from this chick. She was openly following him and trying to provoke him and then trying to hit him again. We all know for a fact that if it was a guy doing the same thing to a girl, where if he walked up to a girl student and just randomly hit her as hard as he could for no real fucking reason, regardless of her attempts to flee and get away, that guy would have been laid the fuck out by like 4 of the male classmates or possibly a teacher. But because she was a girl, people were giving her all sorts of fanfare and shit about whether or not she was in the right for assaulting this dude. Spoiler alert, she wasn't. It's one thing to simply say, I don't want to be around you, I choose not to be around you, and I feel like maybe I just should stay away from you in school because I feel like you and I will not get along. Instead of the whole, I'm going to walk up and then hit you across the face, and then I'm going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and try to hit you again. But when you shove me away or hit me back in any way, shape, or form, it means I'm a victim and I'm a poor defenseless girl and you're assaulting me. Why does that not go both ways? Why does that not go both ways? That's my problem. It's like, seems like there's no two ways about it when it comes down to someone assaulting someone or being assaulted physically. There is never a fucking two-way street about it. It's either you are the bad guy because you defended yourself from someone attempting to fucking assault you because you happen to have a dick, or you're automatically the innocent victim with battered wife syndrome who fucking snapped, even if you're just this random chick at school that decided you wanted to deck the dude for no real reason. And because you're a lady, you can get away with it because no one perceives you to be the aggressor, even if you're the one actively on film attempting to assault the person when they are trying to get away. And a lot of it plays into the common conception that a woman can never be the offender of a violent crime, they can never be the perpetrator of violence, they can only be the victim. And that's a very, very unhealthy mollycoddling way to look at women in society, is that you view every single woman as though they are incapable of doing something bad or something atrocious to someone just because they happen to be a woman. There are a lot of people who looked innocent as hell on the surface, who were female, who were guilty of horrific crimes because they did not think that anyone would look twice because of their gender and because of their age range. Young women especially who openly commit domestic violence are more likely to get away with it in particular parts of the country because people are less likely to see them as a likely threat to the person's well-being and safety, which unfortunately has resulted in a lot of people actually being killed by pissed off girlfriends. I mean, look what happened to that one TikTok influencer who stabbed her boyfriend to death during a heated argument. Like, he actually died of his wounds later on. I believe it was in the hospital or shortly in the apartment after he'd been stabbed by her. She also attacked him with a bunch of racial epithets for his ethnicity, him being African American. So obviously she was calling him the N-word non-fucking stop, harassing him, swatting him across the face, basically doing everything she could to make this person's life a living hell because she was incredibly fucking insecure and defensive about him simply wanting to make sure that she's not fucking around on him. But yeah, that's my thoughts about the domestic violence double standard and the violence double standard when it comes down to men not attacking, but men being attacked by women or girls. Now let's talk about the dating double standards when it comes down to another reason why men are not okay. Now, I myself am lucky enough not to be in this kind of situation where I have to constantly worry about male friends that are trying to fuck this person in my life. But every dude knows at least one male friend that they don't trust around their girlfriend or their wife, perhaps, because they feel like this person is trying to put the moves on this person, but the wife either doesn't see it or chooses not to see it or would rather not acknowledge the fact that it would be fucking awkward to address the fact this person is trying to schmooze them without really understanding the fact that their lack of desire to shut it the fuck down when it starts happening seems more like complicity with this person's attempt to flirt and be forward with them or be presumptuous about them. But at the same time, the person has, like, a girl will not allow a guy to have female friends unless it's either, like, a member of their family, a member of his family, or someone that she knows he's not physically attracted to. This is not necessarily the case for every woman, but the problem is it's a double standard in relationships that a lot of people will see, is that a woman is allowed to have as many male friends as she wants, even if those male friends are single and openly seem to have an interest in her. However, if a guy has a single female friend that he's not related to or connected to in any familial way, the girl will immediately try to pressure him into disassociating or basically keeping her at arm's length at all times, because he's no longer allowed to have friends that she feel might be a threat to her place in his life. And the problem is it's usually women like this who are usually very, very petty. They're usually very narcissistic. They're usually very insecure. They'll usually resort to gaslighting, or they will do whatever they can to make the guy in the relationship feel like, well, you don't love me because you don't cut this person completely out of your life, or you don't distance yourself from this person, or you don't like limit contact with this person because I feel like they threaten me in one way or another. But you know for a fact that if, like, in those kind of situations, if the shoe's on the other foot, the girl will literally lose her fucking mind and claim that the boyfriend or husband is trying to be manipulative and controlling because he recognizes the fact this other guy is trying to fuck her. And for whatever reasons, either she chooses not to see it or plays selective ignorance, because it'd be easier for her to pretend it's not a problem worth acknowledging than it would be to simply say, wait a minute, maybe you're right. Maybe this person is trying to fuck me. Maybe they are trying to get in my pants. Maybe they're trying to make me believe that they're my friend, so that whenever you and I have a falling out or we have a difficult patch in the relationship, I might be more emotionally open with this person than I realistically should be to maintain like a platonic friendship. And then that'll basically open the door for this dude basically to swoop in, give her some quick recovery dick, and then bail the fuck out again when he realizes that the relationship might survive the issue. And then he has to quickly try to play off like he didn't just fuck this person's girlfriend when they were having a difficult patch in the relationship. Now, honestly, when it came down to one of my former relationships, like that was actually a problem that I had pointed out. It's like, okay, let me get this straight. I'm not allowed to have any female friends. I'm not allowed to talk to any girl, even if it's someone that you know I have literally no interest in. But because they're a friend of mine that I would spend like maybe a couple minutes talking to every few days or so, it means that I then need to completely excommunicate them out of my fucking life and social circle, so that you can feel comfortable that I'm not possibly gonna fuck them, but you are not gonna then in turn also try to have a respectable distance between your brother's male friends who are around your age, or male friends of yours who have openly been very flirtatious and have been very open with their interest in you physically prior to this. And the answer I got was, well, no, I don't have to do that. It's like, okay, well then, honestly, I should have seen the writing on the wall during that period of time, but you know, dumbass is dumbass, so dumbass is dumbassing by not thinking about, wait a minute, something sounds fucked up here. But yeah, the double standard in that is like, a woman's allowed to have as many male friends as she wants that are single and possibly sexually interested in her. But if a male has a single female friend that is even remotely conventionally attractive, who's not related to him in some way, those kind of girls will be very insecure and will just gaslight the ever-loving shit out of their boyfriends by making them feel like they don't care about them unless they cut contact with these people completely. Another problem with the whole social isolation that a lot of these people play in relationships, another one of these imbalances that I've noticed, is that when a girlfriend gets into her boyfriend's phone and blocks all of his family members and all of his friends to basically keep him all to herself, she sees it as protecting the relationship in those extreme cases. But if a guy were to do the same thing, he'd be looked at like someone like David Koresh, where he's basically isolating someone from any support network or any support system that they have to more or less make them entirely dependent upon him for everything that they would or would not need. And then for some reason, people constantly try to play that up like, well, it's okay because she's doing it for them. No, she's doing it for her fucking self. She's doing it for her fucking self. No one that actually gives a shit about their relationship isolates someone that they claim to love from other people that they love just so they can try to manipulate the person into feeling like their loyalty and their, I guess you can say, their love and their affection should more or less be conditional on whether or not the person's entirely willing to bend a knee and just do whatever the fuck they tell them and isolate themselves from anyone that cares about them. And the sad part is there are people who will defend this kind of mentality if it's being done by a woman tooth and nail for no real reason other than the fact that they like to justify Stockholm Syndrome. I mean, that's really what it is. You're just being Stockholmed into a relationship at that point, basically being guilt-tripped by saying, if you leave me, it means you never cared, even if I'm doing horrific things to isolate you from people you care about. No. I'm gonna say it for every guy in the room. Fuck those kinds of people. I don't care if you have a wang or if you have a lady wedge. Fuck whoever does that shit. Fuck whoever does that shit. Because basically all that bullshit is basically I'm gonna manipulate you and make you feel shitty for questioning my really fucked up and really obscene desire to manipulate your life and those who you happen to have association with. And if you dare threaten my authority or challenge what I do in any way, shape, or form, then I will find a way to make you feel like you're just being paranoid or being an asshole, and I'll find a way to make your emotional state and your mental state hell. And then for some reason, people try to justify this and act like this is a completely irrational, completely lucid way to behave when it comes down to how women will sometimes engineer a relationship to be all about herself. Like, that's not a woman. That's a narcissist that happens to be a woman who wants to own you rather than love you. Because if someone wants to love you, they'll be willing to stand by you through and through, instead of just finding whatever reason they can to bury your ass and keep you in a place where they know they have you kept and controlled. And for some reason, you know that if it was a dude doing this shit, it would be a Criminal Minds episode.